Welcome to the Red Rose Film Club, a movie podcast that examines the wide world of cinema through a perpetually lefty, pinko commie, soy boy, cuck, Antifa, super soldier filter. But more specifically, we love movies and want to create a podcast that would appeal to the disparate tastes of our liberal, leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist, and Leninist friends. Red Rose Film Club is for leftists of all stripes who don't know what to talk about at parties other than movies and politics. My name is Craig. I work in public education and am passionate about social justice and workers' rights. My tastes range, but mostly exist on opposite ends of the highbrow, lowbrow spectrum. And I'm with...
Hey, I'm Hal. In 2024, I'm switching it up and taking it back to the basics. I'm a socialist, trying to grapple with our world by reflecting on it through art, theory, and the will of the people. So, Craig.
Yes!
Today we are mixing it up. We're going to forego our standard categories that we usually use to lead in to talk about pop culture and politics. And instead we're going to do a short review episode, launching into our own yearly assessment of our media consumption and the hours that we cherished or wasted in movie theaters and beyond. Before we dig in and you start going through the categories, did you get any Christmas gifts related to film this year?
I did. I got a few. I think my family mostly knows how to shop for me because I like movies and video games and books. So that's primarily what I got from folks. A lot of books this year.
Oh, nice.
One movie-related book that I'm excited to read, which is Werner Herzog's new memoir, which I can't remember the exact title of, but it's the most Werner Herzog title of all time. It's I'm gonna look it up. It is called Every Man for Himself and God Against All, which is kind of a career retrospective memoir from Werner Herzog. So I'm excited to dig into that. I also I have a fairly, not a huge movie collection, but a fairly large movie collection that I've started organizing. And I'm trying to fill in some of the gaps of the director's films that I have. And I started working on one that has a huge filmography, so I told my wife I want some of his movies. So I got a couple movies by Steven Soderbergh. I got the Criterion of Shay and the Criterion of Traffic. So yeah, and I got Barbie on Blu-ray, which we were just
Traffic may come up later.
Okay, I'm trying to think in what sense. Should I know already?
Maybe not a good sense, I'll say, for one of our categories.
Never seen either.
Oh,
so there we go.
All right. We'll touch on later.
Shay or Traffic. What about you? Did you get any good movie-related gifts for Christmas?
So I did not actually, but I did. My mom, as my husband and I are leaving. Oh, geez, I almost just knocked all of my coffee over, but I didn't.
The first time it was you and not me.
Clutch. So as we were leaving, my mom went, wait. I bought you this Blu-ray last year, but my mom endeavors to be very equitable in all of her gift giving, both in terms of amount spent and number of items. So she was like, I bought this and it just didn't fit in. So then I was going to give it to you this year, but then I found something else and it didn't fit in, so I'm just going to hand it to you. And that is a Blu-ray of Altered States, the Ken Russell film.
Hell yeah, I haven't seen that. I think I have it somewhere. But
you got to watch it.
I do a lot of my movie collecting at yard sales and shit. So
Smart.
I have normally I'm not gonna buy a new movie of one that I haven't seen, but I have a lot of movies from garage sales and flea markets that I'm I need to watch this one day and it's $1, so I'm gonna grab it.
I think that Altered States is, there are some movies that are, I think, good for hangouts or kind of, not to be too trite about it, but kind of drinking movies. Yeah. And I think it lends itself really well to watching with a couple of friends and drinking a little bit of wine, because it is phantasmic nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's fun to be on that ride. I think it's a hangout movie. Hangout movie in a different sense than Dazed and Confused, or something like that. Yeah, so I got that also a Christmas gift to myself, only in that I ordered it several months ago and it was pre-ordered and it should actually be showing up today. So I bought a shirt that someone made of Paul Schrader's Transcendental Style in Film.
Hell yeah.
Where the front of it is the book cover and the back of it is the very classic illustration that he drew with all of the like concentric circles classifying different filmmakers.
Okay.
And should be arriving today. So
Hell yeah.
I'm excited to have that in tow shortly.
I got a good shirt too. My sister got me an Etsy gift card.
Nice.
For Christmas, and I usually just buy t-shirts on Etsy and I found one that was so stupid that I had to get it immediately, which is a fake band t-shirt called for a band called Nick and the Cages, and all 5 members are different versions of Nick Cage from different movies, except one is John Travolta from Face Off. So
perfect. I can't wait. Next time we record, we should aim to wear our new film shirts.
I almost forgot. My wife also got me 2 John Waters movies on Blu-ray. I got Crybaby and Serial Mom.
Oh,
and
great.
I bought myself
2 movies we talked about this year in some of our intros.
And I bought myself, with a gift card that I got, Female Trouble, the Criterion. So that should be here soon.
Classic.
Haven't seen that one. I've seen all the other ones. Haven't seen Female Trouble.
Oh, well, you're in for a fun time.
I'm trying to convince my wife, who's like, doesn't love the like uber gross out like nastiness to watch
the filth that comes with the camp.
Like she likes John Waters quite a bit. Like we watch a lot together, but she hasn't watched Pink Flamingos or any of those. And I'm trying to convince her because
it's not how should we say palatable.
Yeah, but it's also like
I'm just making a shit-eating joke. Like
yeah. Was that real?
No,
I didn't think so because it was like always the urban legend. Like my dad insists that's real. And I'm like, that's not real.
Sometimes we have to let the boomers maintain their own myths, you know?
I was like, there's no way that's real. But but anyway, so yeah, sounds like a lot of lovely Christmas related films.
Yeah, so you ready to dive in?
Our tops and bottoms of the year. We have a few categories that we want to line up and talk about, a few superlatives. And we had our did I just do that? Yep, I sure did. Our first one is, let's talk about our top 3. What were some of your favorite non-film media that you watched, consumed, read this year?
Yeah, so for my first, I'm going to say the Dead Ringers miniseries that was on Amazon Prime, starring Rachel Weisz. And, you know, some directors really like Karen Kusama and Sean Durkin. He's going to come up again a little bit later. Were involved with it, and I thought that it was, a very successful use of the format. They genuinely do not seem to be aiming to revisit it or extend it further. Like, it is a single series. It makes full use of the space beyond like a single episode or a movie format, but it's also a self-contained story. I think that it builds on what Cronenberg laid out. It is erotic and frightening and filthy, but by gender flipping the central characters, it opens up a lot more possibilities in terms of them wrestling with maternity in a way that like paternity or fatherhood was never quite relevant to the Jeremy Irons configuration. So
Hell yeah.
How about
Still
you?
haven't watched it. This has been a parade of me going, haven't seen it, haven't watched it. One of my favorite things that I consumed that was not a movie was actually, this came in just under the wire because it's been in the last couple days, but I bought a couple Junji Ito books.
Yes.
And I've never read him before. And it's dope. I've read 2. Well, I've read 1 and I'm like almost done with the second one.
What did you read?
Gyo was the first one. Have you read that one?
Yep.
Yeah, that one's real weird and crazy. For the uninitiated, it is a book about I don't want to give away too much. Basically, fish start sprouting biomechanical limbs that start a land invasion. And then there's other like sci-fi horror elements thrown in there and like reveals and all that. And then the other one that I'm reading is Uzumaki,
yes, the
awesome.
Classique, or also known as Spiral.
Okay, because I don't know much about the guy. I know you had recommended him. I have a few other friends, and I was talking with a friend, and he couldn't remember the name of it, but he was like, the Spiral one, and I hadn't read it yet, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's the one I got, because I just grabbed...
Yeah, Uzumaki is its like transliterated Japanese title, but it's also known as Spiral, and the movie that's based on it is called Spiral.
The Saw movie.
Yeah. What? No.
That would be funny though.
Listen, if they put Ito in charge of the Saw series, it'd be a lot better,
It
probably.
would, yeah. I mean, because his like these books are, I don't know, horror in a way that like I've never really experienced before. There's something so what's the word, like non-tangible, or like the horror he comes up with is like body horror for sure, but in
Well, it
such,
also
like,
has
a weird,
cosmic horror elements.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
doing a Lovecraft thing, but without necessarily trafficking in the direct like tropes and
like,
symbols that
right, yeah,
Lovecraft does. And I think there's not a ton of examples of that, right? Things that feel like that overwhelming otherworldly cosmic horror that don't take that exact form.
But they both have that sense of like helplessness. There's nothing you can do in the face of this like otherworldly,
right? The doom
horror.
is so massive.
Yeah, especially like Uzumaki, which is just like mostly just like vignettes of, so Uzumaki is a book about this small town in Japan that like all of the residents start becoming obsessed with spirals, so much so that their bodies begin like physical obsessions with spirals, where people will like literally kill themselves by twisting themselves into spiral shapes and stuff.
Right, and that's very like market of Lovecraftian fiction, where it's like pursuing and then subsequently possessing a knowledge drives you mad.
Right.
It's a new take on that. I was actually looking to craft this. I was looking back at my like books read in 2023, and the first book that I finished in 2023 was Shiver by Ito.
Okay.
So
I'm definitely buying one.
We're on the same. We're on the same track.
What about you? What's another non-film media that you enjoyed?
I will go with a book as well. I've talked about it on the podcast before, so we don't need to fully dive into it, but I'm always out here stumping for Vincent Bevins, and I wanted to bring up again If We Burn, the Mass Protest Decade. And I think that he makes frankly a really compelling argument for why leftists who are not operating in a Marxist-Leninist tradition need to reflect on that history and approach to organization, both in terms of organizing people but also broader social organization, like much more intensely. And I don't always like necessarily agree, but I think it is an important, specific, and concrete call to action. And I encourage folks to read his work. And I think I mentioned this when we talked about before, but he goes through and talks about a bunch of different of the like early 2010s mass protest movements in other countries, and really some were not ones that I knew basically anything about, and some of them, like Tunisia, for example, maybe only knew from this kind of like orientalizing Arab Spring framework that doesn't really get at like what was happening on the ground and the organization or lack thereof. So I wanted to put that forth again.
Oh yeah. Well, for me, my next one is going to be, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I have this really annoying habit of just getting like really into one podcast and just listening to it continuously, and then when I finish it, I'll start it over if I like it enough. And so I don't branch out a lot, but this year I've been branching out and I'm listening to new podcasts, and I discovered a podcast that I really like. It's right up my alley, and it's called Guys with do you know who Murder Brian is? No. Did you ever listen to Street Fight Radio?
No.
It was like I never listened to Street Fight, but it kind of came up with Chapo Trap House as like when that first started calling like podcast the Dirtbag Left or whatever. And it was run by this guy named Brian Quinby, who's just kind of he's a funny dude, just kind of neurotic, and but an interesting fellow. Well, Guys is him, and he's obsessed with like reading Yelp reviews, like just the dumb shit that people will leave on Yelp reviews, which inevitably leads him down to like weird subcultures on the internet. So every episode they look at a different kind of guy and talk about that guy. So there's been like episodes that are like bourbon guys, metal detector guys, Chive guys was one of my favorite, if you remember.
Like
the Chive.
Yes.
And the
You're
co-host,
just describing Floridians, just so we're clear.
yeah. And because the most recent episode they did was college football guys, and a large chunk of that was devoted towards FSU and the current
the CFB.
And the co-host is this guy named Chris James, who's a really funny comedian. He does what I'm going to say is the only funny prank call show that I can think of, because most times prank calls are not funny. But he does this thing on YouTube called Not Even a Show, where obviously he doesn't reveal, but he somehow gets phone numbers for really high level right-wing weirdos and prank calls them. So he's done multiple, he and he does really well of like sounding like a fan and then turning it into like either a really subtle dig or a really obvious one. Like the running joke is he's found ways to call Sebastian Gorka multiple times and then just talk about how big his head is while he's on his podcast.
One, this is extremely up your alley. Two, Sacha Baron Cohen quaking in his boots.
It's really funny. But then he'll just do some dumb shit too that's like so silly that I love it. Like one of my favorite ones is he had like this centrist Democrat on, and he's like, hey, part of what I do for my show is we call it the Dance for Positivity Hour, because we don't want the lefties and the righties are always fighting, so we just want to dance, to get out those good feelings. And then he proceeds to dance for, I want to say, 8 minutes on a Zoom call where he was just like, I'm gonna dance as long as this guy is gonna just sit in front of the screen. So he just dances for forever. It's really funny. But yeah, Guy's podcast is really funny.
My lord.
It's good. What about you? What's your next one?
My last for this category is I'm a Virgo, which is another TV miniseries.
I thought that was your preface. Like, I'm a Virgo, so obviously I like this.
I'm notoriously a Pisces, Capricorn.
PPC.
Sounds like an untested drug. No, it's the title of a miniseries. It's Boots Riley's most recent output. It's also on Prime, so I'm, not stumping for Jeff Bezos, but apparently this year my limited television tastes align. In line with, other media artifacts we've seen produced by Boots Riley, it is explicitly political. It is operating in a magical realist tradition. It's about a 13-foot tall kid growing into a man, maintaining basically that same height. And it's about love and romance and art and fucking, and then also how the world views young black boys as men far before their time. Also, the villain is played by Walton Goggins.
Oh, hell yeah. Love him.
So highly recommend. The music in it is great. It's got vibrant colors. It's a feast for the eyes and the mind. I highly recommend. I think that the name of the show has maybe done it a little bit of a disservice in that it does. I mean, it is relevant to the content of the show. But I think that maybe it puts off people who don't care about astrology. And also it doesn't really indicate anything about
what it is.
Like what actually the thrust of the plot is. But I highly recommend it. And again, it's not that many episodes. It's a mini series. You could definitely chug it in an afternoon.
And the kid in that I really like. I haven't seen him in much, but he's the what was the name of that Ava DuVernay thing about the Central Park 5?
When They See Us.
When They See Us, he's one of the kids, like one of the main focuses in When They See Us, I believe.
He's in Moonlight too.
Oh yeah, he's the like bully kid that
his name is Jarrell Jerome.
Yeah, he's great.
Jerome.
Excuse me. All right, cool. Well, I'll be brief with my last one because I know it's something I've talked about before, and I believe it's something that maybe is not up your alley, but god damn it, do I love every second of this season of I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. Really funny. Like every season I feel like gets funnier and funnier, and there's a few episodes on this season that just don't miss. Have you watched any of this season?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Are you the memes, at least the driving crooner? Are you on with that one?
No, when I see his face, I go, I'm sure other people are laughing at this, and I scroll
and
past.
Craig is. But the driving crooner one I really like. It's also it's like I think it's a good because he's not like necessarily like that topical, but I think the driving crooner is a good kind of like parody of like hustle culture too, because he plays this guy who has an idea for a new kind of cab, and that's one where he's put a decal on his sticker. Or excuse me, on his window, a decal of a fancy like fedora and a cigar, and only plays like Frank Sinatra.
Oh no!
So when you drive up next to him, other people see him, and he does like a little pantomime with the cigar and the hat. And it's the stupidest idea ever. And the sketch starts to devolve because he just can't figure out why he can't make money off of it. He's like, yeah, and he has one of my favorite lines this season. He goes, "I gotta find a way to make money on this. I really want to." And it's just fucking funny. Like, I love that show. He's great.
Whomst among us.
Right, yeah. But yeah, so that's our non-film media of the year. What about, let's get into some movie talk. And before we get into this year's movies, let's talk about what were some of your favorite first-time watches that were non-2023 movies.
Yeah, so for the first, I'm going to say Bamako.
Okay. So I thought you had seen that before.
No, I had not.
Awesome.
No, it just came up while I was searching. I mean, I knew that I wanted to talk about colonialism, and so classic old letterbox list searches, and then doing some investigations. But when we did our 1 year flashback in November, for the pod, it was a movie that came up a lot, and the more that I reflected and trying to pare down this list, it was the real standout for me, both in terms of its filmmaking and it having like emotional impact, and again, its ability to speak to macro level themes, history, policy, but in like a very small and direct way. I thought it was really powerful. Yeah.
I loved it as well. For mine, I had like some of my 2023 like movie resolutions were, this is always kind of one, but like to fill in the gaps on some directors that I like. So my picks are all from big name directors who movies that I had missed for all this time and watched this year. So my first is Martin Scorsese's After Hours, which I saw for the first time this year.
Me too.
Oh, okay. You must have seen it right before.
Yeah.
Shortly. Oh, yeah, because you said you watched it, and then I went and saw it a few weeks later.
Maybe a couple weeks. Yeah.
Loved it. I love a movie that is an odyssey. I love one that feels like a bit like a fever dream, and and After Hours is great. And
I think it's also special because it is a dark comedy, and because of that, it feels very much. And it's also about the city, right? Like, it is a movie that is about its setting also. And because of that, it feels very part and parcel of the rest of his oeuvre while being distinct at the same time.
Right,
like, it's not, I don't know, sometimes when a director makes something that's a little left field,
like
you don't see how it fits into the grander picture. And After Hours is like, you watch it and you're like, yeah, that was
whereas
Scorsese.
Like The Age of Innocence is a little bit outside of his normal too, but doesn't necessarily fit in to the same world as some of the other ones. No, I wasn't saying that as a good or bad.
No, yeah, I mean, my interest in that movie is so wrapped up in how beautiful everyone is, so it's maybe in that sense it's distinct. I wouldn't say that for the most part Scorsese is like trafficking in like explicitly libidinal forces in the same way that some other people that make hyper violent movies do.
I guess Age of Innocence is still set in New York too, isn't it?
Yeah, but in the 18s,
whatever it is.
I read that book year before last. I should remember. It's sometime between the 1860s and 1890s. I
believe what historians call a long ass time ago.
Yes.
What about you?
Somewhere between 3 decades.
What about you? What's another fave non-2023 movie from this year?
Yeah, I am going to go with kind of similar to you talking about. You like to fill in gaps with the directors. One of the things that I kind of usually try and endeavor to do with at least some of my movie watching is to watch older movies that I have, like, and I mean like pre-1970, because I watch a lot of like 70s film, but watch things that are pre-1970 that I have always just kind of assumed, or maybe as a teenager when I was watching a lot of movies all the time, kind of assumed I wouldn't like, they would be boring, that they just like wouldn't appeal to me. And so a movie that I watched for the first time this year and then subsequently watched several times after watching it initially is Charade.
Oh, okay.
The 1963 screwball comedy starring Cary Grant, wow, and Audrey Hepburn, also wow. But
star power.
Yeah, truly. But it's great. It's funny. It's charming. The typography in it is amazing. Like easily one of my favorite credit sequences ever. And I was just really delighted to be proven wrong by recency bias.
Yeah. Yeah. My second one is, again, a director that I like, and one of our premier pervert directors. I love a pervert director.
I love a pervert director.
Next episode, I'll talk about another, maybe the premier pervert director, because I watched one of his movies. But this pervert director is Paul Verhoeven, and I saw one of his more recent ones for the first time, which is Benedetta.
Yes!
I love that. I think I talked about that on the pod when I watched it. This was probably spring or summer, but I love like I think we've talked about this before, but just like a repressed nun story.
Yeah,
there's so
love
much
a nun
like
story.
There's just so much. There's just something like there's so much wordless storytelling that can be done with that like in a look or a glance or a wiping your butt with hay. The stuff that really stood out to me in Benedetta. I don't know why that.
No, I think about it too.
It's so visceral, the idea that she wiped her butt with hay, and then I was like, oh god, and that's the part that stuck with me so much. But.
That is, I think I mentioned this when we talked about previously, but Benedetta is one of my favorite movies. Yeah. I love a nun flick, and I think it's one of the best because I mean Verhoeven is a master of cinema and is someone who has his own unique voice but pulls on the strings of history and is like very referential at the same time. And I feel like he really made a movie that is all of the best parts of different kinds of nun movies. It kind of has the serious consideration of faith of something like Black Narcissus, but is also like scandalous, filthy, sexy, and sensual in the way that like Behind Covenant Walls is. I love that movie. It's also one of the few movies that I will put on while painting, even though it's not in English, because I've seen it enough times that like I just can kind of be like, this is where we are. Like I'm just gonna dip in here regardless of what's actually going on. So brava.
All right, what's your final non-2023 movie?
My third, I am going to say Working Girls.
Okay.
The 1986 movie about a brothel. I would really like to cover this on the podcast at some point in time to kind of continue previous conversations we've had around sex work. I think it is really unique in that it exclusively centers the sex workers that it depicts, and that there's not any like redemption narrative, some moralizing, like none of that is present. It's literally treating them like workers.
Right. Yeah.
And Lizzie Borden, classic feminist filmmaker. One of those movies that I watched and I went, why the fuck didn't I watch this before?
Yeah.
You know? So what's your third in this category?
Great lead in, because when I watched this movie I was like, why didn't I watch this before? And I think it has instantly become one of my all-time favorites because it's tense as shit and simple as a motherfucker. And I also talked about this on the podcast as well, but it was William Friedkin's Sorcerer, which I watched for the first time. Just like,
me too.
Hey, this is weird. I think probably you brought him up, and then I was like, I've been meaning to watch that.
Yeah,
and then,
I watched it when I had my first gum surgery of the year, so it was a pretty early.
Yeah, this was probably would have been like for me,
February.
So
yeah.
But God, so good. Just a simple premise: a bunch of dudes have to transport a truck full of like nitroglycerin through a jungle without blowing themselves up, and like
Roy Snyder, what a fucking
great.
Badass.
Yeah, he's great. And then there's just like literally the most tense movie of all time, and it'll be like you're watching did the wheel of the truck cross a board? You know, is the board gonna hold a wheel? And it becomes like the most intense like moment in a movie.
Did you watch any like featurettes or read anything about it? One of the craziest things about the movie is that like the danger being depicted, the scale of it is not real, right? In the sense that they're transporting nitroglycerin, but they were doing most of that with practical effects. So like the truck actually would fall into a river and then like 15 guys have to like fish it out. And there's also something, what I was gonna say about, I have really grown to like Roy Schneider. A couple of years ago, maybe a year before last, I saw All That Jazz for the first time and kind of got on a him kick. But I feel like he is a man that feels like the danger that he's encountering, that he's not fully acting. And maybe it's because he's constantly smoking like a chimney that you're like, he's flirting with death. But like him and the directing in that movie, it all just comes together where you're like, I know that this is like a really famous movie that many people have seen, but maybe I'll get to the end of it and they won't have survived. You know, it will have been different this time.
But all right, well, let's talk, before we get into movies, let's talk about some of our favorite performances of the year. Let's talk about our top 3 favorite performances of 2023. What's your number 3?
So some of these other categories I did not necessarily structure in order. Mike slapped me in the face. This one I tried to do. I will say after we each say our 3, I have several honorable mentions. This is very hard to limit it. But for me, my number 3... and this is coming in right under the gun because I watched this only a couple of days ago.
I have one like that too.
But is Paul Giamatti as Paul Hunnam in The Holdovers.
Hell yeah.
Have you seen it? It's on Peacock if you
nice.
own it. That's why I ended up, Jared and I, hi Jared, and
Jared?
I watched this on Friday night. Stayed in and watched it, and it is so cozy. It's like a hug. Now I cried multiple times. It is emotional and intense at times, but it really feels like a comforting Christmas movie, and Paul Giamatti is given it. And I mean, you know, this is very much part of his narrative for the Oscars this year, that he's had so many successes and not been given the formal recognition, right? It's with Alexander Payne, the same guy who directed him in Sideways, for which he notoriously did not win. But I think that this is really a career high for someone that consistently turns out not just solid, but great acting performances.
Hell yeah.
What about you? What's your third?
Well, my 1 and 2 are like quieter performances. My number 3 is not
Somebody coming in with a bullhorn.
As much of a bullhorn I think as any performance could have given this year, and that is Joaquin Phoenix and Beau is Afraid.
Nice.
You know, I love Beau is Afraid. I know that it is you know, some people might say it is a 3-hour like panic attack, and it certainly is. And I think that like he is being big and huge in it, but he's also having to carry a lot of like, he's in like practically every scene in the movie, and he's doing weird shit and like you know, playing different ages, different time periods, and he's one of those, like, I find him like a magnetic performer anyways. Like, even
I'm with you. I like him a lot.
That I don't like, or that he might not be the best in, I still find it hard to like not watch him. He's just such a strange guy and strange mannerisms that I find him compelling.
Yeah, he does in Beau is Afraid, which I quite liked. I think probably not super high over kind of the average consensus, but greater than.
We'll talk about it later.
But I think that he does a really good job of conveying that the physiological experience of anxiety is not usually, not that it can't be, but it's not usually like outwardly like screaming, freaking out, right? Like that a lot of the management of anxiety for someone, especially that has like a chronic debilitating mental illness or neurodivergent diagnosis, is knowing that you're going to probably be okay while fighting internally against the other side of you that's saying that you absolutely will not be,
Yeah.
and that you're actually kind of almost stunned into silence or indecision or avoidance because of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like he captures that really, really well in
'Cause I
this
think
movie.
a large part of what the movie is not showing reality, is showing his perception of reality,
Right.
and we're living in that world. So he's like kind of playing it on multiple levels, where he is this guy that lives in the normal world, but in his brain it is like a fucking apocalyptic like nightmare of anxiety, and it's just yeah, I love it. What about you? What's your number 2?
My number 2, I feel like this is gonna be like a little left field, and in fact I forgot this movie was even this year until I was looking and making. I thought that it was at the end of last year. It was not. It came out in February of this year. Or, well, not this year. This is we're recording this 2024, but in 2020, February of 2023. That is Dave Bautista as Leonard in Knock at the Cabin Door.
Oh, yeah. I saw that one. Finally, one that I saw too.
Nice. I am on the pod many times talking about how much I love Bautista, and how I think that he's a really talented performer. And I think it takes a lot of skill and restraint to come off as measured and careful when you are a hulk of a man. And I think that he achieves that really successfully in this movie. And I think that if someone else was in that role, or if just a weaker performance was in it, I would have not liked the movie as much as I did. And that for me is defining. Like the movie, for me, the success of the movie rides on his performance, and I feel like he knocks it out of the park and makes what would otherwise be okay, you know, moderately fine material, makes it sing.
Yeah. I didn't like it that much, the movie, but he is really good in it, and I think it is partly because the menace that he brings is almost playing on his like notoriety as a tough guy. Like he's yeah, you picture him as Drax or as a wrestler or all that, and then the menace is that he's gonna say things quietly, calmly, collected, but they're horrific or whatever.
Right, he is constantly evoking something without touching it.
Right, yeah.
And that I think is a really is very deliberate.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's an accidental choice.
Yeah.
You know.
Can we take a tangent for a minute?
Sure.
Because Dave Bautista, if you didn't know, was a wrestler, and we do like wrestling from time to time. And I watched my first AEW pay-per-view event last week.
Interesting.
Did you watch it?
Yes.
Because I watched it with AEW watchers, so they were able to fill me in on all the stuff. But I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Okay.
But I also know that I witnessed, I guess, what was a big monumental shift with Adam Cole.
Yeah.
Was that
that's
suspected from you?
Yes.
Okay, because our friends were like devastated.
Yeah, I mean, so the reason why I had like some hesitancy is just because I would consider that AEW has delivered many, not just strong, but like legendary in the history books strength of pay-per-views, and I would just consider this weekend's to really not be up there at all.
And that's actually what our friends said as well. But they were the reveal. So in spoilers for this AEW, but in AEW, there's been an antagonistic faction. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong. Led by a guy calling himself the Devil, a masked man. And for months, it's been who is the Devil, and then it was revealed to be Adam Cole, who's like the person they're antagonizing, Maxwell Jacob Friedman's like best friend, and it was this betrayal. And it was fun watching it with our AEW friends because they were truly devastated that it was Adam Cole.
Yeah, and it was, interesting because MJF has been on a title run, and that was overturned by, Samoa Joe, who I also like quite a lot. They're some of my favorite wrestlers. It's I think AEW is in an interesting period of growth, where they have to make some like meaningful decisions about what direction that they're headed in. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it and that you got to see MJF in action, because he is one of my favorite dudes.
More glad that I got to see Toni Storm in action.
Yes.
I did not know of her before, but the second she showed up, I was like, what is this? And why is it my new favorite thing in wrestling?
Okay, you have to go back. So Toni Storm is, I've talked about her a little bit on the pod before, but in the last several months, she's been doing a bit where she goes by the Timeless Toni Storm, and she is going as a like silent film actress
Yeah,
and
yeah.
is currently in a Sunset Boulevard-esque plot
Yes.
line with another woman wrestler named Mariah.
And when she comes out, they go like black and white.
Yeah, it
with
goes
the,
black
like,
and white.
slow frame rate.
Yeah,
and
and
it's really
in
it's really cool.
during Dynamite or Rampage, like their weekly shows, oftentimes there are picture in picture, right? Like they cut to ads while the wrestling's also happening, and they've been doing some very cool stuff with her there where they've had her do like silent movies during
cool.
it. So it actually is like utilizing what usually people hate and is like very frustrating, like, oh, you guys fucking cut to picture in picture like right as something's going on. So I definitely, those can absolutely be watched on YouTube,
Yeah.
and I highly recommend. Yeah, she is definitely a gem too.
Hell yeah. All right, well, I think it's on me for my second favorite performance of the year, and this is one that I just watched in the last week. And the performance is, there's two really good performances at the heart of it, but I think she really carries the weight of the movie, and that is Greta Lee in Past Lives by Celine Song. Have you seen Past Lives?
I have not.
Yeah, it's like I said, a very quiet performance. It reminded me a lot of Richard Linklater's Before trilogy of like the idea
Yeah,
of
that's
like
why I didn't see it, because I like romantic dramas when they are fucked up, like when people are being tortured by love, like something. I've heard that her performance is great, and I want to be clear, I love Greta Lee, and she's like one of the best parts about Russian Doll, and I'm glad that she has these stepping stones to a bigger audience, but that's why I didn't see the movie.
Yeah, I mean it is not a like fucked up love story. It's, you know, it's sad and tragic, but it's not tragic. It's just like basically like you know, the choices you make and how that might impact your relationships down the road. And so we pick up with this couple, well, not couple, but like every several so odd years when their paths cross again. But yeah, she's fantastic in it, and so is the fella whose name escapes me, but I'm gonna look it up. Tou is also. Oh no. Is this not in order of? Yeah, that is him. If that's not him, I apologize. I'm just looking at it on Letterboxd, and I read the second name after Greta Lee.
I believe it is.
Okay, cool. What about you? What was your favorite performance of the year?
So my favorite performance of the year, I'm gonna say Zac Efron as Kevin in The Iron Claw.
Hell yeah.
To return to wrestling. It is a like another performance where the movie hinges, like the movie success hinges on him, which I think is particularly impressive in light of the fact that it is an ensemble cast, and there are some, I'm going to say heavy hitters, not in that they're storied, right? They're not older, but like, or, you know, highly awarded, but just there are a lot of folks fucking delivering in the movie, and he still stands out. It's a very physical performance. A big part of what's going on in this movie is the ways in which like masculinity represses being in touch with your emotions. Yeah. And in the context of aggressive levels of familial tragedy, his ability to walk the line between like the repression and then letting it express itself is really finely navigated.
Awesome. Cool. All right, well, my favorite performance of the year, and again, is one that we've talked about recently, and truly there was 3 great performances in this movie, and I didn't want to put all 3 of them in my top 3 because that would have been boring. So I went with probably like the quietest of the 3, and we've commented on that before, but it's Julianne Moore in May December. Nice. I just love the fact that this is a character who's never admitted wrongdoing, like just makes every second she's on screen like so fascinating in the way that like how is she going to portray this person trying her best to steer clear of any uncomfortable like self retrospection or anything like that. She reminded me of the meme of the kid with the like vein in his head because he's trying not to like you know, like she's just doing that for the whole movie, but it's like of like positivity covering up like deeply fucked up transgressions and things that she just doesn't want to even look at, and yeah, there's just so much in there that is great. Yeah,
she does an amazing job through a lot of really quiet decisions of demonstrating a psychology that is a house of cards.
Yeah.
You know, and that when we begin to see that one of the cards has been plucked from its structure, how the rest of them waver, and how like she has to kind of totally engage in the facade, or all of this is unfurled. It was really, really impressive.
And
for
the
sure.
way that like she can like communicate menace through like a seeming, like the first time when Natalie Portman asks an uncomfortable question and she says something like, now why would you ask that about something that happened 20 years ago? And it's just like the uncommunicated part is, I will fucking eat your head if you ask me another question about this. And it's it's just great. I love it.
Do you have any like honorable mentions that you wanted to bring up for this category? Other
than some of the ones that I mentioned as we were going through them, I really liked Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer. I thought he was great. I talked about a movie that I saw several months back where both of the lead performances are great, which is You Hurt My Feelings, the Nicole Holofcener movie with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and specifically Tobias Menzies is really good in that. They're doing something really interesting in You Hurt My Feelings because it is a relationship drama where the like central transgression is, it's not that big of a deal, but it's a big deal. Like, I don't know if you remember. Yeah. Where like, he said something like really hurtful, but he didn't do it in a mean way. He thought he was communicating privately. He was saying it respectfully. And they both recognize that and have to like walk that line of like, you really hurt my feelings. I know I shouldn't have heard that. I probably shouldn't. That wasn't for me. But like now we have to figure out how to navigate that, and it's really great. What about you?
So, related to your May December pick, I want to give another shout out to Charles Melton.
We love him.
Again, I hope he gets nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Of course, I want to shout out Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon. I hesitated to pull her up into like one of my top 3 just because of the amount of time that she's on screen. I think that, you know, if there's a critique to be made about Killers of the Flower Moon, I do think that like kind of counter to what I said about some of those other performances that are in my top 3, like if you pulled her out of it, Scorsese could have crafted the movie in a different direction.
Right.
Now, it would not have the impact that it did. It would not depict, like, it would be focused on a very different element of the story. But I think by nature of the fact that I think she's only in like a third of the movie, it doesn't have the full weight for me as maybe some of the other performances, but she's amazing. I've mentioned before, I think it's now on some streaming services, The Unknown Country, which I saw at the Tallahassee Film Festival that she starred in. It's about an Indigenous woman on a road trip across the United States. Highly recommend, and I can't wait to see what she does next. And I really hope that she's given a starring role that she can fucking chew on, because I know she's ready for it. I also want to give a big ups to children in movies this year.
Oh, I thought that was the name of a movie. Children.
No, children's. There are some great kids performances. I'm going to say kids is like people like 21 and under.
Okay.
You know, I'm thinking in The Holdovers, there are some really great performances of students, including Dominic Sessa, who is going up against Paul Giamatti and crushing it, which is very challenging to do. I also watched Anatomy of a Fall.
That's
in the last week.
I'm queuing that one up.
It is absolutely worth it. I'm going to talk about it a little more in a few minutes. But the son in it, the character's name is Daniel. The actor's name is Milo Mikado Granier maybe. And it is wild what this child achieves in this movie in terms of evoking emotions. And then the last thing that I'll shut up for honorable mention is I didn't feel like either of these movies alone were worth bumping up the list, but I just want to give a major shout out to Margot Robbie this year.
Oh, hell yeah.
Babylon, I think technically was a 2022 release, but we got it in January. Yeah. I saw it, I think, on the second or third day of 2023. And then I watched it again in July. And Barbie, of course, came out in July or in August. Right? No, came out in July. Yes, because I had a day off of work. It came out in July. They came out the same day in July. Anyway, she was fucking tearing into it this year.
She's also in Asteroid City, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see that, but
wait, is she?
I think so.
Okay. I didn't even include that on my list because I saw it and this is the first time I'm admitting this out loud to anyone. I fell asleep halfway through. I went to see it alone on a day that I had off.
Yeah.
I fell asleep halfway through it and I was like, we're going to have to revisit this another day. So.
Yeah, she was. Well, maybe it was a quick role because she just plays a character named the wife.
Okay. I think that she might be in the play that's like in the play or whatever. It was just like a little too meta, a little too cold for me, and I fell asleep. So, but that notwithstanding, Margot Robbie's
that's me. Any movie I start after 7 p.m. So.
Yeah, this was like 11 a.m. Okay, it is on me fully. I should not have fallen asleep in it, but Margot Robbie in Babylon and Barbie has to be up there for me this year.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're getting to our top movies of the year. But before that, let's take a look at some of the shit that we watched this year.
So we didn't clarify this beforehand, but did you mean the worst 3 movies at all that you watched this year or the worst 3 movies that came out this year that you watched this year? Because I have both.
I was thinking of 2023.
Okay, we can do that. Yeah.
Mine are of 2023, but
okay.
I do want to hear your other ones.
Okay, I could do that after.
All right. You want to go first or you want me to?
I could go first. So and these are not really in order because they're all equally bad and it's a toss-up.
Oh my God,
but I'm gonna say
mine are in order.
Okay, I'm gonna say Murder Mystery 2, Netflix movie starring Jennifer Aniston and that's a
Happy
Adam Sandler
Madison production. Yeah.
And the first one, Murder Mystery.
I never saw it, so I'd be completely lost with Murder Mystery 2.
Minus all the flashbacks, right? And the first one was what I would consider to be like a good like parent movie in that like you could watch it with people. No one's going to be like offended by it. Maybe you chuckle a couple of times. You could look at your phone for 20 minutes in the middle of it and not miss anything. The second one does not even like clear those hurdles. Like it just sucks. It just wasn't
stepping
funny.
on a rake for an hour and a half. Yeah,
that might have been better, honestly.
Is he still like? I've not seen a Happy Madison production in a while. Is it like the same tone still? Like
no, it's definitely more. No, for sure not.
Okay.
I mean, there is a little bit of that funneled into kind of the like middle class ennui kind of thing of like, you know, life isn't as exciting as it used to be and we got to stir things up. We got to spice up what we're doing to reignite love in our life. Like that's basically what this married couple is trying to do through this, or that's like the thrust of the plot. But it just didn't go anywhere. It feels toothless. It's not funny.
Also, isn't it like pretty similar to Game Night? Just watch Game Night.
Yeah, way worse than Game Night. Game Night, I'll put forth Game Night every day of the week.
Game Night is funny.
How about you?
My third least favorite movie of the year, and this movie's terrible. So the first two is The Flash. The culmination of like the last 15 years of like bullshit. Like we've got to create a universe. And it is just a mishmash of nonsense. It is.
I'm so glad you saw this and could talk about it because
it is nearly impossible to follow. There are like, you know, they go by that great screenwriting rule of tell everything, show nothing. Just run into it's fucking terrible.
So I heard something. I didn't listen to all of it yet, but yesterday, the day before, I was cooking and I was listening to the new Blank Check episode where Griffin Newman and David Sims are talking about Wonka and the Aquaman 2 or 3, whatever we're on.
Yeah.
And Griffin Newman says in it that part of what makes both The Flash, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that are contributing to The Flash being shit-tastic, but one of the specific things that contributes to both The Flash and I genuinely can't remember if it's Aquaman 2 or 3 that we're on.
2. Yeah.
Okay. Is that Michael Keaton as the returned Batman was supposed to be in Aquaman because Aquaman was supposed to Aquaman 2 or whatever was supposed to come out before The Flash, but they kept
this is crazy.
Like fucking up the
you
cycle of when it was going to be released.
I did not know that, but you can tell because the movie's a goddamn mess.
And so they had to like cut and re-edit all of the stuff, and then they switched it out for Ben Affleck. And so it's like this is what happens when you focus. I mean, there again, many missteps made here, but when you focus on these massive universes where all these movies and TV shows are interconnected with each other, and then one domino falls, and it's like suddenly you have just fucking rat shit.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they had rat shit before, but like this, it is so stupid. Like the Michael Keaton thing is dumb. I don't know. Like, it's just so indicative of like where we are with like the modern blockbuster.
Reader, he took a deep sigh.
Yeah, looking off. It just sucks. I hated it. It's boring, and I think that it's really tasteless. Like all the shit they did in the movie with dead actors, like doing CGI for dead actors to like reappear in cameos, and in some cases alive actors, because Nicolas Cage doing well, but he makes an appearance. But yeah, it's terrible. What about you? What's your next least fave?
Okay. For my next,
I was like, rev up to that one.
My next least fave, I'm going to say The Mother. You probably did not even register for you at all on any level. Is a J-Lo picture that dropped on Netflix.
Yeah, like an action.
Yes,
like Taken.
And I would say that that's the generalized genre of movie that I am the least picky about, right? Like if you have some meaningful motivation and somebody like fighting in a well choreographed way, like I'll put that on and I'm probably not going to complain about it. Like I don't have to be highfalutin about everything, right? But in it, and I'm just going to pull up right now my Letterboxd review of this movie, because I was so aghast. So the description the Letterboxd has of this movie is a deadly female assassin comes out of hiding to protect the daughter that she gave up years before while on the run from dangerous men. Okay. So the premise of this is like to save her daughter early on.
Right.
She gives up the daughter to be raised by someone else. J-Lo is continuing to live her own life, and then the daughter later as a teenager is being threatened, and J-Lo tries to intercede. Now's my time.
Yeah, okay.
There are many demented things about this movie, including the fact that J-Lo works at Guantanamo Bay.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Oh, I might watch this now.
And that's like not in any way critiqued, viewed as disqualifying. Like it's like she's good. She works in the military. She's a guard. A guard at Guantanamo Bay. Also,
that's crazy.
There's very little attention paid to like the emotional complexity of like you gave up whether that be for just or valid reasons or not, and now this teenager like has you thrust back in her life at like a full ass nearing adulthood age, and the movie is entirely conceived from the perspective of Jennifer Lopez's character of being like, let me in, like let me, you know, I should be able to be your mother again, basically. And then this is the reason why I wanted to pull it up.
Show you that Guantanamo love.
Yes, I want to pull it up because I needed to confirm which song it was. The very end of the movie has a needle drop. If I gave you 500 guesses, if I gave you 1,000 guesses, you would literally never, ever identify or guess, not identify.
I was going to go Mother by Danzig, but that seems...
It was This Woman's Work by Kate Bush.
Okay, cool. that was just clearly like, oh, Stranger Things cashed in on that Kate Bush train. Let's throw another one in there.
It felt like a movie that was written like for conservative young people who conceive of themselves as trad, you know, quote unquote trad, and like are looking forward to working for the CIA. Like it was
cool.
It was so fucking bad.
Well, that's a good lead in because my number 2 is for liberals who conceive of themselves as wanting to work for the CIA. And I saw this stupid ass new fucking Sam Esmail movie, Leave the World Behind, with Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali. I do like an apocalypse movie. And I will give credit where credit's due. There are like a few cool set pieces of like, did you see M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening? Oh yeah. So I equated to that where like there's a few moments that are genuinely like kind of cool because like the happening, like when that lady at the beginning sticks that sewing needle in her neck, I was like, this movie's gonna be dope, and then it just amounts to nothing. And this is that. So like it's a family of okay, Mahershala Ali, Ethan Hawke, Julia Roberts, three of like traditionally some of the most likable actors in Hollywood that all have like the chemistry of like a wet towel like left in the goddamn washing machine. Like they are all terrible.
Are we sure that they were all in the room together while all the scenes were being filmed?
Oh, yeah, because Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali have a like racism ending dance scene, which is
ooh.
Ugh. Yeah, like Julia Roberts.
Save the for real Last Dance.
Oh my god, Julia Roberts' character, I cannot understand why she accepted this role, because like her number one
money.
Her number one. Well, also I left off that this movie was executive produced by Barack and Michelle Obama, so FYI. And it is basically about how there is a world. I can't spoil it. Do we care? Do you care?
I don't care.
So basically,
listener, if you care,
skip ahead.
1, don't. 2, skip.
First off, like the whole movie is just you're just watching like end of the world tableaus, like this family encountering. So they go on a vacation to like nice like little like Martha's Vineyard or some shit, and their cell phones stop working, and then like weird shit starts happening. Like they're on the beach and a huge cargo ship like runs aground on the beach, and they're like, wow, what the fuck's going on? And then Mahershala Ali and his daughter show up. They are the people who own the Airbnb that they're staying at, and they're like, shit's gone bad in the city, we need to stay. And Julia Roberts' character is mostly defined by like, I don't want these black people in my house. Literally, that is like, they show up and she like says like, she makes a comment about the girl's hair at one point. Literally is basically her character is like, I don't trust black people. And then they have a scene at the end where like Mahershala Ali puts on, I don't even remember what record it is, but she's like, oh, okay. And then they're like, we're cool now.
So it's like very, very bleak that like the apocalypse is what solves racism.
Not even, because it doesn't even amount to anything. It's like they never like. So ultimately, it's that the U.S. is being invaded by a like foreign power.
Not even aliens.
No, it's nothing interesting.
Wow.
And then Kevin Bacon is in it as like a MAGA character who like the consents like the movie. I don't know if they realize they're saying this is like the MAGA guys are right. Like you need to stock up on guns. You need to like not treat your neighbors with respect, because when the shit hits the fan, they are going like the movie is basically saying like be more MAGA prepper. It's fucking stupid. It's terrible. It's annoying. It's 2.5 hours long. It's awful. It's really boring. Is that? Oh, and then there's just a whole side plot of the son. Like, we see him sneak a photo of the teenage. I guess she's not teenage. She's like early 20s. Mahershala Ali's daughter. Sneak a photo of the pool and then later jerk off to it. And then there's that's just not revisited. Just like teenagers. Yeah, the movie stinks. It just I did not like it. I did not like it at all.
Yeah, that's generally what I've been reading. And so when Jared and I on Friday were like, let's watch a movie at night. We'll hang out over Zoom and chat about it. And that movie came up, and I was like, everything I've been reading about it suggests that it will simply piss me off if that's what I spent my Friday night watching. So let's watch The Holdovers instead.
One thing though that I love about the director, Sam Esmail, who's the guy that did Mr. Robot, he's married to that woman who's in that show everyone likes that I don't watch, that was on for a million years. These are great clues. Shameless. Emmy Rossum.
Oh.
Yeah, he's married to her. And do you remember like maybe a decade ago or less when the Ashley Madison leaks happened?
Yes.
His name was on those leaks, that he had an Ashley Madison account, and he released a press statement that was like, this was research. I was doing this for research. Which, I mean, maybe, but still, that's like just a funny thing to happen and a funny excuse, even if it was true, to rattle off.
Yeah, I'd like him to list what it was research for.
Right, yeah. That was like Pete Townsend from The Who. He got arrested for child pornography like maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and when they his big defense was I'm writing a book. I was doing this for a book. I don't know if that book ever came out, but so great. Anyways, what about you? What was your least favorite movie of the year?
My least favorite movie of the year that came out this year was Magic Mike's Last Dance.
Oh, that's sad to hear, actually.
I love the Magic Mike series.
I did not see the second one. I saw the first one.
Full Defender, obviously, of Soderbergh. Think the things that make the first two fun and worthwhile are totally absent in the third movie. Like, to me, the best parts of the first and second movies, and maybe it's like also what makes the second movie bearable, given that it's just a worse movie than the first one, is the male camaraderie, that it's about these men that have united in their friendship to kind of survive and fight and endure through their circumstances. And the last movie decides to be basically entirely about a love story between Salma Hayek's character and Magic Mike. We don't see a ton of dancing. I mean, there is eventually, but most of the movie is totally bereft of it.
Yeah.
And there's like Salma Hayek's daughter, like pre-existing daughter, not with said Magic Mike, has like voiceovers in the movie that just like don't make any, like, why have we so radically shifted the perspective of what we're focusing on in it? I will say there's a dance scene where Channing Tatum is, you know, naked dancing for Salma Hayek, where he pulls himself, like does a pull-up, like the calisthenic movement, does a pull-up out of his pants. And it's like really funny, and I cheered in the theater. Right. The rest of it sucked, and I actively disliked it. Yeah.
I have a running joke with my wife that that one day I'm going to be fit enough that I can jump into my pair of pants, like in one smooth motion.
Well, you got to find this scene.
But now the running joke is like when she's not looking, I'll like kind of get them up to my knees already, and then do like a little hop and go, I did it, and then so she turns around and I'm like kind of got them fitted.
So you're ready for a Sondheim feature.
Wait, did Soderbergh do that one?
I think so. I don't know.
I mean, I love Soderbergh too, but when you make that amount of movies, like he's put out some stinkers.
You're gonna have some stinkers. Yeah. I mean, I want to say that yes, he did, because yes, he did.
Okay. Did he do the second one too? I feel like he didn't do that one.
Maybe not, because it's like a return. This was a return. But I had pretty. Yes, he did not direct the second one. Okay. I won't say I had like sky high expectations, but I think the first one is a very good movie, and I think the second one is a very fun continuation. It's nonsense, you know, like what is this like stripper house that Jada Pinkett Smith is in charge of? You know, it's total bullshit, but it's fun bullshit. It's a great sleepover movie. You know, again, it's a great hangout movie, like drink some wine with friends. This movie was like a totally shite romantic comedy that I would be mad that my mom made me watch when I was 17.
Damn.
So what is your third, or number one as it were, worst
this is interesting, 'cause
film of the year?
Depending on the context I put this in, I could put this at my number one favorite movie of the year, because did I have a great time watching it?
Oh no,
I surely did have a great time watching this. But I did in fact watch the Daily Wire's Lady Ballers last week. I am solely being ironic and silly. This movie is terrible. My brain is like rewired in a way that I just get dopamine rushes from watching these idiots do these stupid things. But I did see Lady Ballers. It is as stupid and dumb as you would imagine. I was shocked to realize that trans people are not who gets it the worst in this movie. It's just women in general. Like the general conceit of this movie is that like any man could beat even the highest like athletic woman on the planet. Like Ben Shapiro could beat Serena Williams is kind of like I feel like the consensus of this movie. Like the whole thing is like playing in a ladies tournament. Why are we even playing the games? We already won. Which
You
is
know
very,
what I would love to see? Serena Williams beat the shit out of Ben Shapiro
that
with
would
a
be
fucking
awesome.
tennis racket.
Damn, that would
Really, anyone, any single athlete.
He almost got the shit kicked out of him on live TV one time. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh, I gotta remember this woman's name, but he was on some panel show. This is before like the Daily Wire had gotten big. He was on a panel show. This woman's name is Zoe something, with a trans woman, and he kept misgendering her, and she, Zoe Tur is her name, who I think is a journalist, but she has a great line where she puts her hand on his shoulder and goes, "Listen here, young man, if you keep doing that, you're going to leave this studio in an ambulance." And you can see him like, "Is that a threat? Are you threatening me?" And it's fucking
Oh,
great.
I see. I see the...
But yeah, I think that is like the closest he ever got to getting his ass kicked on TV, which would have been awesome.
Yeah, it looks like she's coming in with the Spock grip.
She does, yeah. She puts it right on it, like not enough to like she knew what she's doing. He can't call assault. This is just, hey, buddy, this is
Uncritical support for Zoe Tur.
hell yeah. Also, Ted Cruz is in this movie. It's a cameo. Okay, this is indicative of the comedy.
You shouldn't be allowed to be, and I mean this cross-cutting in any fucking direction possible. You should not be allowed to be in a movie if you are currently
look like Ted
holding a
Cruz.
public office.
That too. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? When did you film this, sir?
Okay. Here is the cameo. Like, because I remember seeing this in the trailer and being like, that's not funny, but they must have cut out some dialogue because there's absolutely no joke there. And they did not cut out dialogue. This is exactly how it appears in the movie. Is he is going in to watch one of the Lady Ballers games and walks down an aisle, and there's a woman with 2 open seats, and he goes, "Is this seat taken?" And she goes, and gives him a look, and he goes, "Never mind," and walks off. That's the whole, there's no joke. There's no like, that's it. She just looks at him like, I think the joke is like, I don't want fucking Ted Cruz sitting next to me. And she glares at him like, but
that's not a joke. That's an accurate description of reality.
But like, the whole movie I would say, is just like is for like, just teenage boys that think like, nut taps are funny.
Well, it just I mean, I want to make it very clear. Someone being hit in the nuts
is kind of funny.
Can be pretty funny.
Yeah.
But it just sounds like, especially what you're saying in terms of like cis women catching it too.
Yeah.
Is it just all comes back to like, right, this fucking conservative idea that just like women, cis, trans, otherwise, just shouldn't be in public spaces.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you're just saying it's just like women shouldn't be playing sports, like
people.
you just shouldn't be in public spaces. Like, let's, engage in hyper segregation and stop contending for power on any level.
Yeah.
What a bunch of fucking bozos.
Also, in the very first scene, Jeremy Boring, the CEO of Daily Wire, who wrote, directed, and stars in this movie, tells the only black kid in the scene not to steal his catalytic converter, and then the kid does.
I think all of these men need real jobs.
And for real, like, these dudes have never worked a day in their life of like, and it's just so pathetic, like, because Jeremy Boring, Ben Shapiro, all of them were like Hollywood wannabes.
You know what I would actually encourage?
An update too to something I said earlier on this pod, but you go.
I would support and endorse the only kind of television or film that they should be engaged in the production of and starring in would be, if they want to do a Jackass, if they want to physically awesome. Torture themselves, I support that.
Yeah, hell yeah. Michael Knowles is gonna hit who would be a good one?
We put the shit fart helmet on him, and then
that's a Michael Knowles one. Michael Knowles is also in it as one of the commentators. That like one of the running gags is the Lady Ballers have convinced all the libs to be more true to themselves. So Michael Knowles and Gwen Shapiro, the girl that is on Daily Wire that looks just like him, play the commentators, and like every time they come back to them, they've put new pieces of like ethnic garb on and are now identifying as like, I identify as Native American, and Gwen Shapiro's like, I identify as like Pan-African. Like, that's the whole. She's wearing she looks like Cleopatra, but she says like something about like she's wearing like a dashiki with like braids and shit. It's the whole movie is just the joke. I identify as this.
Did Chat GPT write this?
I wouldn't be surprised. It would do better. No, because it would be better than what Jeremy Boring wrote. But yeah. So one update to something I talked about before is I know a guy who's like a high level Daily Wire dude. I think I told you about this before.
You've said before.
And I got I watched the whole fucking credits of Lady Ballers because I was like, I want to see his name come out because I know he's affiliated high level with Bonfire, whatever the fuck that production company is, and I didn't see it. So I looked him up and I found out he mainly works on Chip Chilla, which is the Daily Wire's children's cartoon. But then I did a little bit of digging and I found several Daily Wire shows and he is a talking head on one of them. And I got so geeked that he's in. It's one of the Daily Wire sports shows and he's there to mix it up about sports. So this guy I know, God, I got so excited. Still not gonna say his name because I feel bad about that. But he does deserve it. But I'm too much of a wimp.
May we all find new courage in this coming year. Do you have any movies? I brought up, we don't have to go through all of them, but I did write down some of the worst movies that I watched this year that didn't come out in 2023. So one of them, which came in right under the gun, is another one of those like watched it with family. And I remembered it because you talked about Kevin Bacon. It was not initially written down. Okay. But R.I.P.D.
Oh shit, Jesus!
I watched he's in for that? The first time. Yes, he's the evil cop.
That's the Jeff Bridges, Ryan
Reynolds. Yes, he's like Kevin Bacon is Ryan Reynolds' like partner IRL, who then ends up being like the devil or something. I don't know. I was like, wow, this is a really, really bad Men in Black ripoff.
I never saw it, but that is exactly what it looked like.
One of the other things I've written down is Traffic.
Oh, okay.
That's why I said it was coming back.
Okay.
I feel like kind of similar to Crash.
The Cronenberg Crash or the Haggis Crash?
No, the Haggis Crash is a movie that, because Traffic came out in 2000, and Haggis Crash came out
2003. Yeah.
It just very much feels of the era of Bush era bullshit, where liberals are really invested in the power of the state to as punitive measures. Like, so it's not, like liberals in 2000 were, let's say 2000, 2005 are not like, yes, we could build the power of the state to like provide people more healthcare or like, engage in direct cash transfusions and reduce childhood poverty. It's like, they're like, well, the conservatives are wrong about some things, but the thing that they are right about is crushing everyone's fucking spirit with the criminal legal system, and Traffic definitely like has that. Like, I would really say Crash is the Haggis version is like the closest analogy that I have for it. And of course Traffic is about drug trafficking. And then the other one that I wrote down is Tears of the Sun from the same era.
Willis?
Yes, 2003. It's
I think I saw
Antoine Fuqua film that is like they're going in on a secret like CIA mission, or maybe it's SEALs, whatever. It's some covert operation, secret military operation, secret war shit in Nigeria. And Bruce Willis's character is like, wait, we actually have to save these Nigerian people instead. And it just results in like a bunch of people die. None of those characters are ever named or ever like speak of their own accord. It again is just very classic, like early 2000s, like the U.S. gauged an empire building where they're like, but if we had some good intentions at some point in time, it's fine.
Like Parks and Rec.
Well, people aren't being murdered in Parks and Rec, so I would say it's a little better. But so those are the ones I want to bring up there. All right, ready to dig into our top 5 films of the year?
All right, our top 5 movies of the year. You want to kick us off again?
Sure. These are, I did place in order, so I will say.
Me too.
My number 5 movie of the year is Infinity Pool.
Oh, okay, cool.
I love my freaky deaky Cronenberg family. There are several standout moments where I gasped, was shocked, cackled, like elicited an immediate response from me. And so the sick and twisted part of my brain that likes to be scratched really liked this weird, freaky, libidinal little movie that Brandon Cronenberg made.
I like that one too. It was high up there. I don't know if it didn't crack my top 5, but I enjoyed it as well. Except I don't like all these goddamn Canadians coming in and taking over our top of the year lists. Mine, I'm realizing that most of my top 5 are movies that I've touched on elsewhere in this episode.
Okay.
So I'll keep it fairly quick, but I do love I love just a little simple relationship drama. So I love Past Lives. I just watched it. Past Lives is great. Celine Song's debut feature, I believe.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I was also
fantastic.
just reading something that she's married to the guy that wrote Challengers, the new Luca Guadagnino film that's coming out with about like the tennis love triangle.
Huh. Let's see.
So we love a cinematic power couple.
Kuritzkes.
Love not to take away from her. I just heard that like earlier today. But so what is the thing that, so if you think about other movies that are kind of in that vein, that are kind of a little bit of a slow burn romantic drama, what makes it stand out for you?
I think I also like, and this is why I like a lot of Richard Linklater's movies, that like themes about like the passing of time. Cause I don't know, like cause this movie takes place over 24 years. And I don't know, there's something interesting to me about like the passing of time and how we change but stay the same. And I think like I've been I think everybody does this, but that idea of like what were the little decisions that I made in my life that set the course of where my life went or whatever. And I think this movie doesn't really have like an answer for that. It's just a meditation on like how that's kind of a natural thing to think about and wonder about. And it's and I think so much so like some people think that as like a bad thing to like imagine what would my life be like if I didn't meet my significant other or didn't get this. And the movie's kind of like, no, it's not necessarily bad. That's inherent. Like you're gonna think about that stuff, and like this is how our lives became what they are. But yeah, it's a very it's a lovely movie, I'll say.
Nice.
Yeah. And it also did the thing where like I kind of like the trope in like a romance movie where the like interloping third party is like the fucking putting a stick in the gears to just fuck everything up. And this movie is more obviously it's more complex than that. Like there is that interloping third party, but it doesn't go it sets it up to be more I guess cliche in its presentation, and then that's not where that part of the story goes, and I find that refreshing too.
We love a reversal of expectation.
Yeah. What about you? What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Anatomy of a Fall.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna see that so bad.
It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes in 2023, and so I really wanted to see it before we recorded this episode, and I was really blown away by it. Kind of my joke interpretation of it is it's like one of the first movies I've ever seen where a wife is a husband. Just the woman in the movie is kind of is constructed in the way that maybe conventionally husbands tend to be constructed in movies about marital strife, of like overly focused on the job, maybe capitalizing off of the labor of their partner. Like there's all these elements and funneling that into like what is basically a crime procedural. There's just a lot to chew on, and I don't think it has like easy answers for I don't think there's any clear expectations for you like this person or you don't like this person. Like it's not asking you to set aside judgment. And I quite enjoyed it. And as I mentioned before, the child actor's performance in it just is mind-blowing. He plays a young boy who is visually impaired.
It's the kid of the couple, right?
Yes, the kid of the couple. So Anatomy of a Fall is about a man has died by falling out of a window of the family home. And then the movie proceeds. The wife is indicted for the murder of the husband. And then we see the court case and the social interactions and exchanges of the people who are wrapped up in this court case as it proceeds. Yeah, so I think it's definitely worth watching. Unfortunately, it's not streaming on anything, and I think because it is a pretty new release, like I had to pay $6 to watch it.
Damn.
But
top dollar
for a rental. But I will say to you, dear listener, it is worth it. If you have $5.99, throw it and queue it up.
Yeah.
It's worthwhile.
That's one of the ones that the length has. My wife and I both want to see it, but it is a longer movie. I believe it's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
so
I think it's like 2:35.
Yeah.
And
like something. I said, I can't stay up past 7:00, so I gotta fit it in.
It's also interesting. One of the most interesting things about it is that it's mostly in English, but not exclusively. So I think that's also, it's like essentially English is the central meeting zone for the characters in it.
Okay. Same with Past Lives.
Interesting.
Oh, not mostly in English. It's because like part of the I just took over Anatomy of Fall, but part of the story takes place when they were kids in Korea, and part of it takes place when they're adults living in the U.S. Okay. And a really interesting part of the movie that I left off, but it's probably my favorite scene, is there is a scene where one of them is in a relationship at this point, but they haven't seen each other in a while, so all three of them decide to go out to dinner, and one of them does not live in America, never lived in America, does not speak English, so they're like catching up in Korean while the third party who doesn't speak is kind of sitting there awkwardly, and it's like a really touching moment, but also kind of an awkward moment that it balances really well. Sorry, I just blurted that.
No. I'm glad you raised that because the language barrier is an important part of Anatomy of Fall. It's like the mother, the lead character in Anatomy of Fall, is German. We never hear her speak German. She speaks English very proficiently and kind of speaks French. Yeah. And everyone else is French and speaks French. And so English is what she primarily communicates in. And then sometimes there's court scenes where she is speaking in English and everyone else is speaking in French. And it's a very interesting, very similar to what you just described, though obviously maybe oriented towards a different end of communicating barriers and like social obstacles that come from, wherever we draw our lines and where we come from. Yeah. And so interesting kind of continuity there. Yeah. How about you? What's your fourth?
Well, I love a movie about someone who is proficient in their job, and I like a thriller, and I like a thriller about somebody who's proficient in their job.
I can see where this is going.
David Fincher's The Killer is my fourth favorite movie of the year. Again, like we talked about that, kind of like a tonal shift for him, but still very much like in his. It's not showy and it's not flashy. Like there are big like showy like tricks and set pieces. Like they built that whole like. That whole set of the building like that he's scoping out at the beginning, but I just love a movie that just takes you through a process, and like somebody who is good at a job, and you're gonna watch them be good at a job, and you're gonna watch them go, why did they do that stupid thing that they just did? And then you're gonna see, because they're thinking like 3 or 4 steps ahead or whatever, and it's just like a nice tight little thriller, and I enjoyed it quite a bit.
This is a Soderbergh heavy episode.
Oh, you got another Soderbergh coming?
No, but we've talked about the Magic Mike, and I talked about Traffic, and we talked about The Killer.
The Killer's Fincher, David.
Oh, true.
Is it
what
not?
Am I talking?
Am I crazy?
You're right. And we've literally talked about it, and I've watched it. I don't even have any excuse. I am dead sober. I'm caffeinated. Just dumb. Sometimes you're just dumb. It happens.
They're not that far off. Like as far as like when they came up, it's an easy one. I give you an out.
It's sometimes you just start off the year being dumb as hell.
Yeah. That's fine. What about you? What's your third favorite Steven Soderbergh movie of the year?
I'm gonna say Killers of the Flower Moon.
And we're gonna talk about some stuff that we haven't gotten to, but I have not seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet.
Fair.
I want to so fucking bad. Again, the runtime is. It's hurting me a little bit.
It can be a barrier. I saw it the day that it came out in theaters. I had reserved, tickets a week in advance. I have talked on the pod many, many times about how much I love Marty. And it is, I think it's like, there are kind of two ways that I can conceive of directors that are, or that I would classify as like masters of their domain. And one model would be like someone who navigates so many different genres, right? Is able to successfully pull off a lot of different approaches, while remaining true stylistically or having some core truths that are theirs. And then I think kind of the other model is like knowing your zone and just boring down until you get to the core of your zone. And I feel like that's what Marty Scorsese has really done. I think he flirts with the first model a little bit, like we talked about. Things like Age of Innocence are a little outside of the box or whatever, After Hours. But this movie to me is just like large ensemble cast, is examining cruelty and greed, and the ways in which like criminality and legality are sometimes like two sides of the same coin.
Right. Yeah.
Elicits strong performances, uses music effectively. Like this movie is just like really hitting all of his notes, and harmonizing well with the rest of his work. And I don't think that he, as I kind of mentioned earlier, with talking about Lily Gladstone and how she's in like a third of the movie, I don't think that this movie is fully dodging critiques about not centering the Osage people. But I do think that for his perspective and the platform that he has, he made something that was really true to himself and his artistry, while not shutting the door on other competing perspectives. And I think the movie ends perfectly. And I will not hear, not from you because you haven't seen it, but
I'm gonna say I
zero
got thoughts on it,
criticisms. I do not receive any criticisms about the way the movie ends. I think ending it on a cinematic note that reflects back onto the ways in which art produces truth, and that truth should be questioned, or can be questioned, or does not actually indicate like the full depth of the issue. I think he's being self-reflexive about his own limitations there in a way that only a master could do. So, fuck yeah, I love that movie.
Cool. My number 3 is one that we already talked about, and now I'm getting self-conscious about it because that's what I keep saying. But it is Beau is Afraid. I love Beau is Afraid. I feel like movies that try to depict like mental health and anxiety in a real way usually like it comes off like trite, like I don't know, like I don't know why this is what came to my head immediately, but the like Saved by the Bell episode where she's like addicted to like caffeine pills because she has like mental, like it just comes off like that. That's not what it feels like to have like anxiety or like mental health problems. But Beau is Afraid is like the closest thing to visualizing what it feels like to like be in the throes of an anxiety attack or like specific neuroses that you might have.
It's a highly, highly neurotic film.
Yeah.
And I will say I wrestled a lot with number 5 for listing that versus Infinity Pool. Okay. So it was like very, very close. I wanted that 5th slot to be weird, gross man.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Neuroticism problems. You know, I think that it interrogates the idea of repression in a sometimes silly, sometimes comedic, but ultimately impactful way.
But always silly, but always like menacing and scary too. Like even the scenes that are meant to be like the like farm whatever, where he's in like farmland. Like it's just creepy, scary. Yeah, it's great. Love it. What about you? We got our number 2.
My number 2, we've talked about this pretty extensively. We talked about it some this episode, but we covered it pretty extensively, I think, last episode. But my number 2 is May December.
Hell yeah. Do you want to talk about that again in a minute?
Sure.
Hey. All right, my number 2 is another long one that happened in the summer when I don't work, so I was able to watch this one, and it's Oppenheimer. I love Oppenheimer. I think just the scope of it, like the story that it's able to tell, and then more specifically, the kind of back half of the movie that really shows like how McCarthyism and like the Red Scare kind of holds like actual important events hostage and twists them for their own ends and their own means. And just like a movie that like fully wrestles with like a moral complexity of like Oppenheimer and, you know, the quote of "I become death" and all that, and to see a man like wrestle with that idea, and Cillian Murphy just crushing it. Great supporting cast. Robert Downey Jr. really good in it, and I don't typically like him. Sorry if that makes anybody upset.
Welcome.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think the Iron Man of it all makes me like, if I say Robert Downey Jr. kind of annoys me, people get up in arms.
I like his performances much more before he went off the deep end, or kind of maybe as he was going off the deep end, depending on how you conceive of it. But like, I like his younger performances much more than I like his more recent
I like
ones.
Like,
so I don't really have strong opinions on him either way.
He's a sleaze in like everything, but I don't like when the sleaze is supposed to be like admirable, like the Tony Stark like character of like, yeah, I'm sleazy rich guy, but a good dude. Like, I want him to just be a sleazeball, like in Oppenheimer. Or my favorite of his performances is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where he's like a fucking like low level sleazeball crook.
Right, like being aware of you being a sleazeball is not an excuse for not changing your behavior.
Right. Yeah. And that just character just gets annoying, like the kind of like winky finger gun guy all the time. But what about you? What's your number 1 movie of the year?
My number 1 movie is Poor Things.
Oh, you saw it?
Yes.
I did not realize you had seen it.
Yes,
it's exciting.
I saw it on Saturday.
Okay.
I will say my expectations were sky high. I love Yorgos Lanthimos. I was very excited to see what he would do with expanding his kind of visual palette. And it did not disappoint at all. There's some like interesting kind of philosophical existential questions raised in it. I think it is ultimately a movie about what if we dared to understand women's development as human development. And I fucking loved it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my number 1, and it was alluded to moments ago, is Todd Haynes' May December. Love this movie. That's one of the ones where I expected, like you with Poor Things, my expectations were very high because I love Todd Haynes, and expectations were met. We've talked about this movie so much in the last couple episodes, but I really loved it. There is not a wasted moment. There's not a wasted scene. There's a lot of like really great little moments in the movie. Why can't I remember who the actor is? But the guy that plays Julia Moore's ex-husband, who was married to her at the time of the incident, that scene with him in the diner is like, it's not even like a big explosive scene where he's talking with Natalie Portman, but he's just so good and real and like lived in. Yeah, it's just, there's so many like little things about that movie that I love. I'm trying to figure out what his name is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the movie is full of great performances. Like Corey Michael Smith, who plays the son from the first marriage, when he's going off, in the diner performing with his band, and then later where he's like kind of challenging reality, where it's unclear what his current relationship with his mother is. Like it, again, that seediness of suburbia, and I like movies that make you like where power is foregrounded, where the relationships between characters are never simply a matter of their interactions alone, but are like a testament to like these broader shifting societal forces. And I feel like May December does that in a way that is really effective. Again, sometimes it's campy, sometimes it's melodramatic, but it's not like someone sitting you down. It's never didactic. It's never sitting you down and going like, she is fucked up because she did this.
Right, yeah,
it's like
yeah.
it trusts you to be smart enough
to realize
to
that,
understand
and then
that,
process what's
and
happening
then,
with the characters. Yeah.
Right, and understand like what actual like psychological effect would that have on people who have varying investments in ignoring it, not knowing it, or knowing it but refusing to acknowledge it.
Yep.
You know, whatever. It's fucking great.
All right. Well, before we close up, did you want to talk about some of the movies that we might have missed? We are living in Tallahassee, Florida. We have 3 movie theaters.
Well,
which one are you calling barely a movie
we've got
theater?
we've got an AMC, we've got a a Regal, which never has movies that AMC doesn't, just so we're clear. So it functionally doesn't exist to me. It's irrelevant.
It's also the grossest theater in town.
Yes. And then we have the SLC, the Student Life Cinema.
But we have the CMX.
Okay.
Also doesn't have anything that AMC doesn't have. But all that to say,
and we've got Cap City.
all that to say, the like big movies that usually come out around now, we don't get until
usually January or February,
if at all.
Yeah.
So there are some big ones that we missed. So what are some of the movies that you didn't see in 2023 that you will definitely be seeing when they roll around?
Yes. So I, for sure, in terms of big tent poles that are out, but I simply did not have time between Christmas and now to see, that would be The Color Purple and Ferrari, Michael Mann's Ferrari. I really want to see both of those movies. They are available in Tallahassee, but, you know, it's been, what, like 1 week, basically, since they came out, and I haven't had a chance to see them yet. And then I'll say there's a series of gay and queer cinema that I am sad to have missed this year or last year thus far. That would be Rotting in the Sun, which is available on Mubi. All of Us Strangers, which is the Paul Mescal, Andrew Scott movie that is coming out but isn't out yet in Tallahassee. And then Passages, which is also available on Mubi. And then finally, the one that I know we're not getting until like late January or early February would be The Zone of Interest.
Yeah, I want to see that one too. Several of mine are ones that were on your list. I still have not seen Killers of the Flower Moon. I really want to see Poor Things. And then one that I really want to see, and it's out on VOD now, I just need to watch it, is the Nicolas Cage movie Dream Scenario. I just love Nicolas Cage in general, and this is one that like
I want to see it as well.
Yeah, it looks
I watched
really
the
interesting and
director's
weird.
other movie, Sick of Myself, earlier this year.
Okay.
For the first time, I think it came out. I think it came out in 2022.
And how was that?
And I liked it.
It's Christopher Borgli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also on my list.
Hell yeah.
And how about last thing before we close out this episode? Do you have any 2024 movie resolutions that you'd like to put forth?
I do. I always have like a few, and usually it's like with the number of movies I want to try to watch, because last year I didn't watch that much. I was like right at 100, which I guess might be a lot for some people, but not that much for others. And this year I want to try to bump that up like 150. Like that used to be my norm, if not low for me, but maybe 3 or 4 years ago I got a job that was a lot more demanding of my time and energy. And now that I'm like, into that job and feel like I'm can do it, I guess, because so much of my time was, am I making a huge mistake? I have more like emotional energy to watch movies again, so I want to try to watch at least 150 movies next year. I also I like to pick out a few directors and be like, I know these directors are blind spots, and I want to watch more of their movies. And one of them's one that I said I was going to do this after we did an episode on their movies, and have so far watched no more of their movies, but that's Agnes Varda.
Nice.
And then the other one is Brian De Palma, who is the aforementioned pervert that I might talk about on our next episode. And then the other one was, okay, this is really nerdy, but like I love making lists. I don't know, you a list person? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
So I've been over this holiday break making like lists of some of my not some, like basically all these movies. But I've been making a list by year of like ranking the movies I saw that year, and I'm all the way into the 30s at this point, so it's almost done.
Wow.
But I also like one of the categories I put was like what country, and I was a little embarrassed that so little of mine were like so many of them were the U.S. And so this year, one of my resolutions I made is watch at least 5 movies from a country from which I've never seen a movie before.
Ooh, I like that.
So none in mind, but on the lookout for, I don't know, a movie from Beirut.
Okay, I was gonna say yeah. Name a no. Beirut's a city in Lebanon.
I knew it. The second I said it. You know why I thought of it is because there was recently there was a movie that came out just called Beirut, and for some reason that was the first one I had to think of anywhere in the world. I thought of this stupid movie that came out. It was a Tony Gilroy movie with John Hamm. Didn't see it. Don't know what it's about. I just was like, pull a country, and I thought of that movie. So I fucked up in all regards, but anyways.
Yeah, I think that I don't put as fine a point on it, but I definitely want to be watching movies from a wider or casting a wider net in the movies that I watch. I do watch a lot of movies not from the US, but they're almost exclusively from Western Europe. Like I watch a lot of French and Italian cinema, and I'd really like to expand beyond the Western Europe and the US. In particular, I would like to watch some more African cinema, and I'd also like to watch some more Chinese cinema. And I think for Chinese cinema specifically, I'm going to try and focus on wuxia, which is like a style of Chinese like fantasy like martial art film. So
cool.
like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a version of that is obviously like most well known in the United States, but I think that would work well because Mike also likes action movies, and that's something that maybe is a good gateway into expanding knowledge of cinema outside of the US. I'd also like to endeavor to see more movies that are more current releases outside of AMC stuff, A-list, right? Because I have an AMC A-list subs. A lot of times the new movies I watch are kind of exclusively coming through that stream, but that is very limiting. So one of the plans that I have, for example, is in early February, The Sweet East, which I talked about last episode or the episode before, is doing a limited release in a few cities outside of kind of standard LA, New York, whatever. And Jacksonville is one of those. So have some plans with some friends to drive over to go see that at Sunray Cinemas in Jacksonville once it releases in early February. And I'd like to continue to do that.
Oh yeah. Well, this was a fun episode, a little bit different than outside of our normal wheelhouse.
Yeah, not as obviously we didn't talk about, kind of the leftist perspective or thread politics in here as much, but we figured just, a little bit of fun time to conclude the year would be nice.
Definitely. And we will be back. Our next episode, we will conclude our triptych of S. Craig Zoller movies with his final movie, well, not final, but I guess final up till now.
May we all be so lucky.
Oh yeah, Dragged Across Concrete, starring Mel Sugar Tits Gibson and Vince Vaughn. So we'll get you for that one. Bye-bye.